Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the New York Baseball Podcast. I'm here along with Ari, and today we actually have a very special guest. We have Tom McCarthy, who serves as the play-by-play commentator for the Philadelphia Phillies, and he's also an NFL broadcaster on Fox and Westwood One. Welcome, Tom. How are you?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you guys doing?
Swell, thank you so much for asking. We appreciate you taking the time. We know it was out of your comfort zone with the Mets and Yankees fans here, but look, we welcome all sorts of commentators, umpires, players, and this is honestly pretty surreal listening to you my whole life. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, just so you know, it's CBS, not Fox. I mean, Fox was my first year doing the NFL. They actually gave me a chance doing the NFL. And I had done college football for CBS, and obviously Westwood had done the NFL. But CBS, I've been doing the NFL for the last 11 years, so it's been pretty cool.
Gotcha. Oh, of course, yeah. We knew you were with Fox sometimes, but at one point. Yeah, CBS for sure. So our first question is just going to be kind of like, how can you talk? We have a lot of young viewers obviously out there, and we wanted you to talk a little bit about your career, how you got started. We before we started recording, we were talking about you starting at a minor league team, and so just kind of talk about your career and how you got to be the Phillies play-by-play commentator, which actually
so I kind of fell into the broadcasting part of it. I was going to college really just to play baseball. All 7 schools that I applied for, I was a different major. And really my only goal was to play baseball and then work out whatever happened afterward. So I was a different major at every school. At Rutgers, I was a business major. Indiana, I was a journalism major. It turned out, North Carolina Wesleyan, I was hotel and restaurant management. I'm not really sure what I've done with that. And the college in New Jersey where I wound up going, my older brother was there. He played baseball. I was a biology major. I was a really bad biology major, but that's where I wound up going. And I got cut from the baseball team the first year, which kind of shocked me a little bit, but I liked it there. So I decided not to change, but still wanted to be involved in sports. So I started writing for a local newspaper and then eventually wrote for a daily newspaper called the Trenton Times and was there for 5 years. And while there, started doing a bunch of radio interviews, kind of like you guys are doing now. And somebody told me I had a good voice. And I thought, well, that'd be pretty cool to do that. So I kind of combined both the writing and the broadcasting. And that eventually is what led me to work for the Trenton Thunder and do Princeton football and basketball and Rutgers football. And then, 7 years later, wound up coming here to the Phillies after a tryout in the year 2000.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned, it's very cool. It's funny you mentioned Rutgers. I'm actually in the business school right now and big Rutgers football. It's good. Yeah, they have a new building on Livingston campus. It's really nice.
They didn't have the new building when I was there. In fact, I walked around thinking, I'm not sure if I want to be a business major.
The whole campus they redid. There's like apartments and like dining.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. When I did the Rutgers games, Greg Schiano's first 4 years of his first go around, they were really starting to really change what Livingston looked like, and it really looks great. My cousin is the head track and field coach there, so I'm up there an awful lot with him. It looks awesome. Campus looks awesome.
Yeah, it's very nice. All right, so moving on. Actually, it's cool. You mentioned you have a game, at 4:00 today. So if you want to just tell the viewers kind of like, what's your game day prep like? Like we all know players have to prepare, but also broadcasters, obviously. So what is that?
It's a little different now because, there's no, we're home while the team's in Miami on this particular day. So there's nothing going on at the ballpark. So we don't get here until probably about 2.5 hours before game time because there's really nothing for us to do. All the preparations at home. But usually, for instance, this is a Monday. So on Monday mornings, I usually prepare my football charts for the upcoming game. And my role this year with CBS is that I am on hold to fill in case anybody comes down with any kind of illness at a particular game. So I got a couple of football game charts ready this morning. I still handwrite my charts, even though I have a computer program. So I did that in the morning. But then I spent about 3.5, 4 hours getting ready for today's baseball game, reading stories, writing notes down, listening to Zoom meetings, because that's everything. That's the only time we talk to people or with Zoom meetings, and kind of got my ducks in a row before I got to the ballpark. So I got to the ballpark probably for a 4:00 game. I got to the ballpark probably about 1:30 and got my scorecard pretty much done, except I'm waiting for the Phillies lineup right now. That's all automated now. I have this automated system that one of my partners has put together. So it's really cool. So it's a lot of research. It's a lot of reading. It's a lot of listening. And usually when there's not a pandemic going on, we're down in the clubhouse listening to players talk and talking to the manager. and kind of getting different storylines. So we're usually here. If it's a 7 o'clock game, I usually get here between 2 and 2:30. Then I can get into the clubhouse a little earlier than everybody else and kind of ask my questions that I want to ask.
So do you have is the access to the players nowadays less than you would normally have?
Yeah.
Pandemic?
Yeah, it's kind of like what you guys are doing right now, that we're doing right now. It's more of Zoom conversations and a lot of text messaging. Our players have been really good with that, and it's really helpful for us. It's also a lot of talking. Like I talked to a couple of our sort of minor league instructors today because we have some young players that are part of our team that they've been working with at the alternate site. So I've been getting kind of information from them just for background for the ballpark. But yeah, the access is a little more stringent now, understandably. But we're still able to talk to them. We just don't talk to them as often as we usually do.
Yeah. Also, how is it calling a game? Like today's like a road game. Like
yeah.
It's hard, like not being there, kind of just looking on the monitor, calling the game.
I kind of liken it to math class. So the first day of calculus, as stupid as that sounds, you're like lost. And I mean, in college, this last day of calculus, I was lost too. But the first day of calculus, you're like lost. And you kind of build from day to day, almost getting used to it. And I think that's what this has been too. I mean, it's not ideal, but it's also hasn't been bad. I mean, we feel like we're more comfortable now than we were day one. And as broadcasters, we've kind of helped each other. So I'm in constant contact with the Marlins broadcasters. I'll be in constant contact with the Mets broadcasters when they come into town, just kind of helping them with who's coming into the game and things like that. And we've got a couple Slack channels going. I don't know. You guys probably know Slack better than I do.
Familiar with that, yeah.
Yeah, so Slack's been really helpful. And then MLB has this great research tool that we've been able to utilize, and that's been really helpful too.
Yeah, you mentioned you've been in contact with other commentators. You're actually 2 out of 5 of the NL East that we've had so far. We had Chip Carey and him on the podcast earlier.
You made him French, Chip Carey. It's Chip Carey, but
Chip Carey. My apologies.
He probably liked being French.
Yeah, we said it like 10 times. I don't think he said anything.
Yeah, we said it like 10 times.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, Chip comes from a long list of Major League broadcasters. Yeah. His grandfather, Harry Carey, was the Cubs and St. Louis Cardinals guy. His dad, Skip, was the Braves guy before him. He's got the greatest hair in broadcasting, and he's a really good guy. I mean, he's a really close friend of mine. So he wouldn't say anything, but that's cool that you got a chance to talk to him.
Of course, yeah. We're like, this is the next step, and this is just amazing for us. So, our next question, and we'll wrap this up soon. Obviously, we have a game. What's your favorite call of all time, and your favorite call of recent history? Maybe like 2 calls here.
Yeah, so I mean, from a baseball standpoint, I think my favorite call was probably Roy Halladay's perfect game, just because there was only 20 of them that were done when his was done. And it's funny, it wasn't a thick crowd down in Miami, but it was just really cool to be part of that kind of history.
Yeah.
I've called Tom Glavine's 300th win when I was with the Mets. That was kind of neat to do that with Howie on the radio. College basketball, my first year doing Princeton games, I called Princeton. You guys weren't even born probably at the time. If not, you probably don't even, I don't know, you're probably rolling around the carpet. But it was Princeton beat UCLA in the NCAA tournament. It was my first NCAA tournament. And that was really neat to kind of call that, because back then there wasn't social media. There was SportsCenter was not in its infancy, but it was still kind of young. And my call was all over ESPN, and I thought that was really cool. And it was my first chance to do the NCAA tournament, so that was kind of neat. So, I've been really fortunate. Baseball, I've been really fortunate to do a lot of cool things, a lot of no-hitters. And but the perfect game for Halladay was probably the most fun I've had doing a game. Winning the World Championship in 2008 was really cool too. I wasn't on the air at that time. I was in the booth watching, because I was only doing the pre- and post-game show at that time. It was my first year back from the Mets. And, that was kind of neat. Playoff baseball is always the best, though, guys. I mean, it really is. It's always the best thing to do.
Yeah. Where does that Bryce Harper Grand Slam call rank on your favorite calls?
It's pretty cool. Yeah, that one was pretty cool. You know why I think it was neat was because it was such raw emotion almost. I mean, John Kruk, using the Lord's name, throwing the Lord's name out there, which was really funny. Yeah. But, that was natural. He was really hepped up about it. And that's pretty high up there. I mean, recently that's probably one of the best ones. I mean, one of my favorite ones. I'm not saying it was the best. It was one of my favorite ones.
And that kind of leads us into our next question before our last one. Where do you see the Phillies this year? Obviously, they're in a playoff spot right now. They have a really good chance of making the playoffs. Do you see them, and like where do you see them going into the playoffs and everything like that?
Well, I think that the fact that the Marlins are playing so well has been very cumbersome to the Phillies because we can't beat them for some reason, particularly down in Florida.
Yeah.
But I do think there's a big series coming up with the Mets, a 3-game series,
Yeah.
and it's big for both teams because the Mets are on the outside looking in right now. The Phillies are hanging on to one of the final playoff spots in the National League.
Yeah.
I think if the Phillies get in and Zach Wheeler's healthy, they're in pretty good shape because they have Nola and Wheeler in games 1 and 2. But beyond that, they got to get healthy. It's like anything else. If you don't have health, then you're probably going to have some trouble. And, JT Realmuto's banged up. Rhys Hoskins is banged up. Obviously, Zach Wheeler's banged up. So they just got to get healthy. And if they do, listen, particularly a best-of-3 series, I think it's a crapshoot for anybody.
Yeah. That Wheeler injury was bizarre, though. Oh, my gosh.
Well, bizarre. I mean, you guys, are Mets and Yankee fans, but I never heard of that injury before for him. I mean, it's something he's dealt with, he said, his entire career.
Yeah.
I'm a Mets fan. I haven't heard of that. So
yeah.
All right, so Tom, I just wanted to thank you. And just kind of like our last question. So we have a lot of young viewers on. So if you could give one piece of advice to these viewers or kind of like one thing you wish you know when you started your career, what would that be?
That's a really good question. I think the one thing that I wish I knew was to not take everything so seriously. And what I mean by that is that there's more to your world than what you're trying to do for a living. Does that make any sense? It's when I was first starting, and this is kind of deep, but when I was first starting, I missed friends' weddings. I missed, family weddings because I had one goal, and that was to be in the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball. And in reality, if I missed that one game when I was 24 years old, it really wasn't going to be that big of a deal. But with that, I think persistence and being yourself was the best advice I ever got. And I took that to heart. And I have been nothing but myself. But I've run into people that try to be somebody else when they're on the air. And I think it comes out. You got to be yourself. You got to be normal. You got to treat people the way you want to be treated. And, the people around you are going to make you who you are, whether it's your engineers, your stat guys, your partner, the people that do audio, all the people that work with you are going to make you who you are. And I think you have to remember that. And
that's awesome advice. And one last quick question before we let you go. So who between you and your color commentator, I know you mix a few in there, John Kruk and Ruben Amaro.
Mm-hmm.
Which booth in the MLB are you closest with?
Well, that's a good question. I would say I'm closest with the Mets guys because I was there. And because I've known them for so long. Chip Carey is who you guys talk to, is one of my closest friends in the booth as well. So I would probably say it's the Mets by a little bit, but I would say that the Braves, Chip and I, we talk all the time in the off season and during the season, and we kind of help each other too. So those are the two that I'm probably closest with.
Okay, awesome. Well, Tom, it was a pleasure having you on. Good luck, and you got a game at 4:00 today, so we'll be watching that. And thanks again.
Yeah, good luck with you guys too, and keep going at it. This is great what you're doing. You guys are nice and relaxed, which is good. And just keep doing it. The more you do this stuff, the better it's going to be for you.
Thank you so much, Tom. We appreciate it. Have a good game.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right.